right, we are here with our candidate spotlight, and today in our candidate series, we're going to talk to Peter Filler, a Democratic candidate for Congressional District 9. Mr. Filler, just if you'd like to take a moment to introduce yourself to the voters of Liberty County and District 9, Eastern, which makes up, of course, Liberty County and Eastern Harris County.
Yes, sir. Hey, I'm Peter Filler. I'm happy to be here with you today, Russell, and voters in Liberty County. I'm an educator. My background is resource management. I have experience as a realtor, as an insurance producer, as well as a tax preparer. So quite a diverse background and very interested in the future of Congressional District 9. I look forward to letting you know some of where I stand on the issues and getting to know a little bit about myself.
We're glad to have you. And let's get into it. The issues. Actually, real quick, just as a housekeeping note, what number? Where are you appearing on the ballot on the Democratic ballot here in Liberty County?
I'll be third on you. I'll be third on the ballot there, Russell. So third on the ballot, Peter Filler.
Okay. And as I did an interview yesterday, that's no indication of anything. It's just where you drew names and where you landed on the ballot. So just so folks know that. But let's get into the issues. What are some of the key issues that are important to you, and what maybe some issues you feel are important to District 9?
Yeah, great question. So there's still so many issues that we can be covering here today. So we'll just start off with, as we know, Congressional District 9 is a redrawn map. I believe Liberty County is currently 36, if I'm correct, but anyhow, so it's going to be District 9. So that's a concern. So just a new congressional district that needs to be covered. My understanding is the new district is 50% Hispanic. And so it's a community of energy workers, farmers, small business owners. So we're a community, we believe in hard work. And, what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. is that, it's not really good enough for them because it seems like they've stopped working for us. So that's something I'm very concerned about. An issue like, for example, in the House of Representatives, the Speaker Mike Johnson, they're not really working for us. That's what I've noticed is that he's more interested in the president's whim than the people's will. So that's a concern of mine as an issue. So we're seeing these discharge petitions that are coming up, everything from collective bargaining agreements to healthcare. That's having to be forced to be addressed by the Speaker of the House. So those are the things that I would condemn. Our representatives need to be representing us and bringing the will of the people to vote, like the issues we're concerned about. Especially extending healthcare subsidies, where our small business owners, our farmers, they need those subsidies. So that's an issue I'm very concerned about, and I would bring to light. I would work to condemn the speaker and make sure that just concerns like that are not just being forced to being brought to the House of Representatives to the deck by discharge petitions, actually being taken up and serious agendas, being brought forth from our representatives.
I guess speaking to issue, you made the comment about the whim of the president. Liberty County specifically voted the last three presidential elections overwhelmingly for President Donald Trump's agenda. What would you say to voters in Liberty County? Because if you are to win the Democratic Party primary nomination, you would have to appeal to voters that have voted historically now for Trump each of the last three elections. What would you say to them?
Well, what we've noticed, Russell, is it sounded good. It sounded like a good agenda, like not starting any wars, like working on the affordability crisis. And even myself, was hearing his sales pitch, during the campaigns, everything sounded good. But so here's the reality, since then, we just saw this past weekend. Now we're involved in a potentially years on end conflict in Venezuela. The affordable healthcare subsidies that we depend on that was not a priority. So right now we currently don't have them. So it was just, I would say, it was a disconnect between, so same as, promises broken on the, the affordability, not starting any new foreign entanglements. So, I'm all for like, America first and taking care of Americans. But when the reality is it's something different, protecting pedophiles, not wanting to bring to the House floor the Epstein files, like having those released, just little things like that make a big difference. So we're just seeing, the promises weren't being kept. So we just need to, I would say, just work in a bipartisan fashion, be honest about really what's happening, and just work for the best outcomes for our district and our country.
You briefly mentioned the Venezuela issue that took place this past weekend. Where do you fall on that? I mean, it seems to be believed by most that Maduro needed to be removed from office. I think that, but the way maybe it was done, it was handled. Where do you feel on that? Because this will definitely, if you end up in Washington, this is probably going to definitely end up before Congress in some conversations along the way.
100%. Yeah, 100%, Russell. It's definitely it's part of the dialogue, and it needs to be. So, where do I stand? Right, I'm probably in agreement with most everyone in the United States. Like regime change, or at least removing, Nicolas Maduro, it was a good idea. But when we looked like how it was done, so we're a representative government, so we're not represented by just a president. So that's where I feel like there was a lot of overreach. There wasn't cooperation with Congress, which everyone knows this. There's no war resolution being presented. Congress wasn't briefed even before. So that was just a very big concern. Without a single vote from Congress, there we were launching Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela. So between we watched for months since September the boats being blown up in the Caribbean without much explanation other than they were drug boats, just a show of force. And then now hearing about the bloated budget. So if you and I, Russell, if we have a budget, or we're not going to exceed that budget, but ever since probably about 20 years ago, we've just seen these ballooning budgets. Just continuing resolutions, and the can being kicked down the road, so to speak. And of course, now hearing about raising the Department of Defense spending to $1.5 trillion budget for the Department of War. So all these things, in my view, I'm a moderate, Democrat. So I think it's just not sending the right signal. We were always the Department of Defense, like trying to prevent getting into these conflicts. So, and then there's really no regime change. It's just we're there, so to speak, to seize the oil, which that could take years and billions of dollars of investment, where the claim was America first. So I think it's just another broken promise of really the agenda of putting our American citizens first.
And this, we went from that issue this past weekend to now we find ourselves dealing with a tragedy that happened this week with a woman killed in the line of an incident with ICE. And of course, obviously, lots of different camera angles and lots of different opinions on both sides of the aisle. And but immigration issues have been important, and they have definitely been on display in our area. And namely, I get to Colony Ridge, in that area of western Liberty County. Where do you fall on the immigration and issues that are at hand, and what we're dealing with?
Yeah, that's a great question, Russell. So where do I stand on the immigration issue? Well, Russell, we are a nation of immigrants. Like, so we want to come the correct way and follow a process. But when we know the system was broken, so we have to face the reality. What we've always done. Like we've had adversity, we've overcome it. What happened this past week? It's unacceptable. I condemn the killing of Renee Good, so an American citizen, was shot and killed by ICE agent Jonathan Ross. That should never have happened. So they're just, they're making us less safe. Like we think about law and order and to protect and defend, to serve our community, police. So that's what they should be doing. They should, we were working with conflict resolution and de-escalating. What we're noticing, it's escalating, the tensions, and all that was avoidable. Like you mentioned, there's plenty of video the first day of her, Renee, like turning her wheel, not trying to harm Jonathan Ross. And then even just one I just saw about an hour ago, looked like his body cam of just to how it went from pretty calm to just out of control very quickly. And if his goal was to slow her down or whatever, keep her from getting away, he could have done something different, like shot the tire. But like I mentioned from the top, we're a Hispanic district, and with this aggressive, these new mandates, I understand like going after dangerous criminals like wholeheartedly if it's an illegal alien, so to speak, or undocumented immigrant from wherever they are, Venezuela, and we know they're gang members, they have criminal records, wholeheartedly. Like let's adjudicate them. Let's get them deported from our country. But if we're just talking about just nonviolent people who, for whatever reason or another, they're a dreamer, they were brought here by their parents, they were somehow involved in the illegal smuggling trade, they wound up here, but they've always been working for years. So I think we should just go back to what was a norm of potentially like how Ronald Reagan did. He did blanket amnesty. So that's where I see it. Like, so we need to just clean the slate, fix the system, and just move forward, since we are a country of immigrants and we want to focus on adding to our population and population growth. If we're what I just heard a fact yesterday is we're reaching now negative, like we're going back in our population growth, we're reducing our population. So we need to be growing our population, and a healthy population. If it's immigrants, they're contributing to our society, so we should wholeheartedly welcome them and just fix our system.
And of course, let's stay. I guess we'll still stay in Minnesota with some other things that have happened. Some fraud apparently has been discovered there with the a community in the state. And anyway, I guess if in Congress, what would you do to tackle fraud and look into fraud and see if these type things are taking place? What would where do you stand on that?
That's a great question. So fraud, waste, and abuse wholeheartedly. Like we have to root out the fraud, waste, and abuse. I believe his name was Mr. Shirley. He was a YouTuber, and he went to Minnesota to do like self journalism. Like that's great. We all have phones and ability to, so to speak, become public journalists. And I agree. Like we should have accountability. It seemed like there was years of investigations and nothing was ever happening until a conservative YouTuber brought it to the attention of the president. And so I know it was conflicting reports on, was this valid, his reporting, since he's just a citizen journalist. So setting that aside, if there is waste, fraud, and abuse, like it needs to be addressed, because we have limited public funds. They need to be being put to good use. And so I'll say that for sure. But what we're seeing is more, instead of like DOGE, like Department of Government Efficiency, we're seeing more like the Department of, they're destroying the apparatuses of government. That's more what it's like. It's DOGE really should stand for destroying the apparatuses of government. That's really where I see DOGE is. So for example, if you take away subsidies for Medicaid and Medicare and all these subsidies, they're destroying the apparatuses of government, systems that have been in place, social safety nets. So that just leads to more pain, more suffering, and actually higher costs for us, because Ben Taub here in East Houston and the Houston hospital system. So that's more strain on them and us taxpayers having to foot that bill. So I think we need good social safety nets, and if there is waste, fraud, and abuse, it needs to be rooted out. Like you made reference to Colony Ridge, a lot of corruption is my understanding, and one of the competitors on the Republican side, he's in a big controversy for taking money and then not giving it back. So if that's we already know, Briscoe Cain is already involved in this corruption. So we're looking for someone who's going to be rooting out corruption, not part of a corruption cog. Like we need to take away the system like the where we know that there's waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption, so that needs to be addressed. And so I see if it's kind of like Colony Ridge, if we know that there's like say illegal activity there, like gang activity, wholeheartedly, like use law enforcement, use ICE, remove that element. So I would just go with that, and but not go after just the hardworking, maybe undocumented people that may be there. It's kind of like an analogy I can give you, Russell. If I say, broke my collarbone, but then I ask the doctors to treat me for cancer, like, so it's kind of like that's the way I see it. Like we have a systemic problem, but we don't go to the highest extreme to try to fix said problem. It needs to be incremental, and it needs to be, in a bipartisan fashion. Like I can see myself working on the Problem Solvers Caucus to address these issues because I'm an educator, I'm a uniter, I'm persuasive, and I believe it's something that Congress needs to hammer out and work with local governments as well, like state Texas legislators, to really come up with the best solution.
I think a good follow up there. You referenced your talents, what you believe could be effective. What about your talents? What areas, other areas, do you think in Congress you would be effective if elected?
Thanks very much. So, yeah, I'm Peter Feller. So I'm an educator. So my background is resource management. So I would say it's my management skills. So I've got many different management skills. Like for starters, my background is resource management. I went to college to study how to, like, say, manage forests, for example. It's very broad. So I can see myself using that management skills to work on the Energy and Commerce Committee, as we know the wave of the future is renewable energy, and I would say we need to make sure, like, our current investments that we've already made into solar and wind, that we're keeping those investments, because as we know, when there's more of something, like more energy supply, the prices go down. So I see my management skill there, like my background in resource management and renewable energy, potentially working in some biofuels and some other new, like for sure nuclear, small scale nuclear modular is just coming up and being developed now. I wholeheartedly think that's a great idea, especially here in the energy corridor, where they could stop, siphoning off so much energy just if they had small scale nuclear at a lot of those sites, potentially attract like a AI data center. Fixing our leaky pipe crisis is another management skill that I would put to good use, because Russell, we move here in just East Texas, East Houston County, Harris County, sorry, we lose about 800 billion gallons of water per year. And as you know, in Liberty County, they're very scarce on their water. So if we were fixing a lot of these, just the infrastructure, we could focus on having more water. As you know, it's going to eventually run out. A 20-year plan would be to fix that. So that's a little bit about my resource management skills, like my finance background. So I'm also a realtor and a tax preparer and insurance producer. So I could use those skills on the sorry, I just lost the name of it, but there's a committee in Congress that'll come to me, the Financial Services Committee. So I work on the Financial Services Committee, Russell, and work on just some of these budgetary crises we're facing. Like we talked about at the top, about a $38 trillion national deficit. So reduce our spending, but I would say we need more income coming in. So I would work to restructure our debt with China. That's one thing. I think one skill I have is a good negotiator. So if we're buying the biggest buyer of Chinese goods, and they're holding most of our debt of the 37 trillion, well, we could easily restructure. Like if we had a high interest rate on a credit card, so we would do our best to get a better rate, like refinance it. So I would do the same, like work with who's holding our debt to restructure that. So those are two areas I could see myself, like with those two skills, my management skills, resource management, and the financial management.
I guess what do you think? You've mentioned water. We've talked about immigration, things here locally. What other issues do you think are affecting District 9, the newly drawn District 9, which I think there's a lot of folks that do have a lot in common in this area, and what do you think?
Yeah, for sure, Russell. So another thing I see, Russell, is the economic squeeze. So we heard about Liberation Day, a great day that's gonna generate us income, and but that just goes again to another broken promise. Like, we're gonna lower your prices, as we all know from school days, that tariffs are taxes. So if we know that tariffs are in fact taxes, that's raising the cost of everything. And here, being in a big industrial area, those blanket tariffs are not a good thing. So that's that's an issue I'd see that needs to be addressed. So since we're so dependent on imports in the manufacturing and the oil refineries, so that's being targeted. Our wallets are being targeted. So we're trying to have more money, more discretionary income to buy the things we want, like homes, cars, just to afford living, putting food into our refrigerator. So we're just living through a self-inflicted inflation crisis, as far as I could tell. Like, I know that was a big, concern with President Biden, that he wasn't addressing it. I agree, but what we're seeing now is actually hasn't addressed it. It's actually caused more weakening of our dollar. The value of our dollar is 10% less now. These blanket tariffs, they're causing the cost of living to skyrocket. So it's so basically, I just condemn the Liberation Day, the fallout, and a complicit speaker. Again, Mike Johnson, he was complicit. He allowed the president to seize power of the purse. So personally, as your representative from here, from Congressional District 9, I would fight to take back that power. Tariffs are fine, but we need targeted tariffs. Not these blanket tariffs. So if we want to talk about tariffs, we could talk about a targeted tariff to prevent unfair competition. So that's another concern that I have, was the economic squeeze we're facing, and part of it is self-inflicted through Liberation Day and these blanket tariffs. So Congress needs to get control back of the tariff power and undo what's currently been done, because it's really harming us.
If you are a part of a Democratic win for Congress in this election cycle, what do you think? What do you think the most important issue for the House would be at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. The most important, so just like, I would say, breaking the stalemate. And so we hear about the do nothing Congresses, like the stay at home Congress, where we saw just where they shut down. They don't have bipartisan agreement. So I would say the most important thing would be just having more problem solvers up there, Russell, and the Problem Solvers Caucus working in bipartisan fashion, less gridlock, because that's why we're facing all these crises. Like, they wait till the last minute for these continuing resolutions, and they end up just kicking the can down the road. So there's there's many different things like I could point to. So we can talk about the affordability crisis. We talk about the healthcare subsidies being extended. We can even talk about just our health and our safety. So when we hear about the standards, what was normal, like the food pyramid, or just anything like the vaccination charts, or just what we would think was our norm for years, and all that being reversed through Robert F. Kennedy. So really concerned about that, like cancer research. And so we're putting tax cuts for billionaires above research that got cut by Doge. And it was one of the things most upsetting, since I do travel the world, like my wife Elizabeth is an educator, and so we've traveled to Europe, we've been to the Middle East, to Israel, and she's from El Salvador, so we've been to Central America, Mexico. So what I was trying to say with all that is, I'm very disappointed with Marco Rubio when he made the cuts to U.S. aid. Like, so they may point to, like you said, some corruption there, but so we're the United States. We're the superpower. So if we're the military superpower, that's great, but we should also be the defenders of just not just protecting and waving American flag, like strengthen our flag, but like, we're humanitarians. We need to be the strength in humanitarians across the world. Our district is a district of immigrants. We know that American soft power and humanitarian aid save lives and prevent wars. And so that's the thing I think we need to focus on, like getting back to the things that were standards, like that we're humanitarians. We take care of the place. If we're the protectors of freedom around the world with our military, is the same with like our aid program. So make sure those get restored. If we've got, trillions of dollars to blow up the world, we should have billions, to feed the starving and protect our interests through peace, our soft power, and not just force, defending, the Constitution.
All right. Well, a couple of other housekeeping notes. Just as a reminder to folks, early voting will begin on February the 17th. Election day is Tuesday, March the 3rd. Liberty County has open voting centers around the area to vote during either early voting or on election day. We will have a forum for Congressional District 9 candidates, both Republican and Democrat, on February the 11th, that's Wednesday, February 11th at 6 p.m. at the Dayton Community Center. We hope to have you there, Ms. Spiller, and hear from you and other candidates. Again, the next night we will have on February 12th, Liberty County Commissioners Precinct 2 and 4, and the 75th and 253rd District Judge races. Both of those are at 6 p.m. at the Dayton Community Center on February 11th and February 12th. And the deadline to register to vote is February the 2nd. Just give you one more opportunity to ask folks for their vote, and as we wrap up this candidate spotlight.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much, Russell. So, Russell, you just mentioned, so early voting starts for the Democratic and the Republican primaries. So that's a good thing, Russell. We have an open primary, so voters, you can either pick the Democratic, primary ticket or the Republican ballot. And of course, it starts for us on Tuesday, February 17th through Friday, February 27th. So no excuses. Get your voice out. Or your voice is your vote, and it really should be mandated that it should be required to vote. Since I believe, even in a general election there, Russell, normally it's like less than 50%. And especially in one of these races, for the primaries, it's very low. So sure, get your voice, your voice is going to count even, it's even more exponential. It's going to count even more. Of course, our voting day, technical day is the, March 3rd, Tuesday. So we'll have our results. We'll have the voting day results in. So we'll see who does the best. And, I really hope, I know both fields are crowded, probably go to a primary. I believe it's May 26th. So hopefully I'll have another chance to talk, but for sure I'll be there February 11th, at the Dayton Community Center to meet and greet with the folks of Liberty County and just, show who I really am. I'm Peter Filler. I'm the voice of the people. I'm a honest, down-to-earth guy and just want to represent you in Congress, be your voice up there in Washington, D.C. So thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to meet you, Russell.
All right. We appreciate it. That's Peter Filler. He is third on the Democratic ballot in order for Congressional District 9. And we look forward to meeting you at the Candidates Forum, and good luck on the campaign trail.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. This is the Vindicators Candidate Spotlights, and we'll have more for you. Thanks.